If you are not using cover crops in your garden, you could be missing out on a ton of benefits for very minimal cost that these things provide. I'm Cameron, welcome back to the Busy Gardener channel. Today, I'm going to be talking through cover crops. What are cover crops? What are the best types of seeds and plants to use as cover crops? When should you be doing this cover crop stuff? What do you do once these are all fully grown? How do you terminate them? If you stay tuned to the end, I'm going to be sharing with you a few things that didn't quite go right for me, and that way you can avoid those. Let's get busy. Cover crops. Cover crops differ from the normal stuff you plant in a garden, where instead of it being like your tomatoes and your celery and your cucumbers that you want to eat, cover crops are here really for the soil more than they are to be harvested. So although we have some varieties that aren't edible, that's not the primary purpose of doing that. And a cover crop is used for a few different things. It's really to solve some sort of problem or to prevent some sort of problem in your garden beds. Cover crops are there to fix the nitrogen and reintroduce some of that organic material into the soil so that way you get more fertile soil. They also improve the size of the plants. They can shade out other weeds, so they suppress weeds, shape them out, and also just makes it more challenging for them to grow. Another thing this does is to preserve moisture in the ground, and it's always, especially with weeding, it's a lot easier to pull weeds from moist soil than it is out of just hard soil. When it's eventually chopped, it's going to lay down on the top of the soil, and it's going to create kind of a mulch. It's going to reintroduce organic material into the soil and just create a beneficial system. That's what we're going for. We're trying to reduce the amount of artificial inputs that we put into our gardens and just use as natural a solution as possible. We ran into some problems that caused us to want to do a cover crop. Our garden beds got overrun by this nasty, insidious thing called nutgrass, which sounds really bad, I found out, and it is really bad. You know what I'm saying. So this nut sedge, which is the actual name of it, goes and it spreads through rhizomes underneath the soil, making these little nuts that just take over the garden beds. We had that go on. Well, we went scorched earth on our garden beds. We got this black plastic over before the summer. We laid it all out and let the summer sun just beat down on this black plastic, and it fried everything. Well, that means it also fried, it did fry the nut sedge, thankfully. We threw it, it was all dead. But it also fried all of the microbial life underneath the soil. So we decided to do a cover crop to improve the quality of our soil, so that way we can come back and plant what we want to plant instead of battling this crazy weeds. Next, I'm going to tell you some of the types of plants that are really good to use as cover crops. The things you're going to choose are going to be based on what you're trying to achieve in your garden. So if you're trying to fix nitrogen and introduce more nitrogen naturally into your garden, you're going to use some nitrogen fixers. Some examples of those are things like clover or peas or vetch. For something like weed suppression, if you're having trouble with that, using something like buckwheat or ryegrass is going to suppress it because they grow so densely that they're just going to crowd out any kind of weeds that might want to crop up. For improving the structure of your soil, which really just means the way that your soil works, the air that gets into it, the water that's able to get into it, the composition of it, you want to use things like oats or radishes, and those send down roots that are going to let air and water go down into your soil. They kind of help to aerate your soil, so that way you don't have something that's super compacted. Each one of these approaches serves a purpose, so mix and match based on what your garden needs. When do you plant your cover crops? In most locales, planting your cover crops in spring, in summer, and in fall before your first frost are going to be totally great. There are some specifics on which kind you plant during which season. You want fast-growing things like barley or some of the grains to be planted in summertime, but those are the main seasons you want to do that. If you're in a warm locale like we are here in Southern California, you can plant pretty much any time and probably be okay. In the wintertime, your fall planting is going to go dormant. It's going to stop growing as much, but the minute the weather warms up, it's just going to take off like it has here. When it comes to how you actually put the seed into the ground, it's so simple. Literally, you just take and throw seed wherever you're going in a small area. You rake it in, you water it, and you just let it do its thing. Now, because I have such a large area, I've got another favorite way to spread the seed in my garden. time to cut all of this stuff down. The phrase often used when it comes to cover crops is chop and drop. And so you've got a bunch of options. The main thing you want to be looking out for is that you chop whatever you've got growing as your cover crop down before it goes to seed. This, even in this rain, for me is the best time to do this, because you may notice a bunch of these are already going to flower. That's going to be seed in no time, and we don't want this to be reseeded. We just want the vegetative material. So I've got a few options available to me. I would not choose something like scissors if you have a large area like this, or pruning shears or anything like that. A main rule of thumb here is you want to get as low to the ground as you can. So coming through with something like a machete, even though it'll be a lot of fun to just come through and start hacking away at this stuff, is not going to get you close enough to the ground. And if you have any irrigation, this is also very like a lot of force. Don't do it. Something like hedge pruners, hedge shears like this can be really beneficial. You just get it near the ground and just chop. What I'm going to use is a weed whacker. This is going to make it so that I'm able to get really low to the ground with the cutting blade, but also not have to squat down across this entire garden. Waiting for the rain to pass has given me some time to thinking about all of the things I wish I would have done differently. In fact, I wrote an ebook called 9 Things I Wish I Knew Before I Started My Backyard Garden. And so I think you should click on the link below, or just scan this QR code right here and it'll take you right to it. Now back to the cover crops. Okay, I'm really happy with the overall situation here. I think it turned out really well. We did a good job of evenly spreading the seeds out. I put up irrigation so that we would do overhead irrigation, but there are a couple of issues that you can see here by these bare patches. We had a lot of growth in other areas, but there was a lot of areas where stuff struggled to grow. One of the main reasons for that is we were left on a trip literally the day after I threw all these seeds in the ground, and we were gone for 3 weeks. The second thing is the amount of irrigation that I had, and so these really weren't getting enough water. But one thing I found was that the only places that the seeds were growing were right next to the emitters where the most of the water was falling down. So in retrospect, I would have either watered them for longer, I would have watered them more often. All in all, it turned out pretty good. What's your experience with cover crops been? Have you ever tried planting anything as a cover crop? What have you seen work? What dismal failures have you seen? I really am curious how it's turned out for you. Giving your garden a chance to breathe and to replenish itself naturally with use of something like cover crops is going to make it so those things you do want to harvest are able to grow that much better and be that much more productive, because you've let the garden take care of itself without having to bring in a lot of artificial inputs. And so if you want some other tips on how to do things in your garden or in your orchard, check out some of our other videos. Hit like, subscribe to this channel if you want to, and whether you've got one thing you're growing in your orchard or garden or 500, until next time, stay busy.